80 miles south of the Galápagos, two go-fast boats raced through open seas and vanished from international radar in under 10 minutes. The Coast Guard's new Pacific Viper network picked them up again, but not in time for the cartels to escape. How do you catch multi-million-dollar smugglers in one of the largest oceans on Earth? The answer starts with a single line of encrypted coordinates that sparked the largest drug interdiction in Coast Guard history. Few people realize that one of the quietest stretches of ocean on the planet, the waters near the Galápagos Islands, is also one of the busiest narco routes in the Pacific. At first glance, it's a marine sanctuary patrolled by biologists and tourism boats. But beneath that calm surface lies a corridor linking Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru's production zones to transfer hubs in Central America. Traffickers treat the islands as a midpoint, a place to drift beyond radar range before relaying new coordinates north. It's where the cocaine pipeline pauses, recalibrates, and then surges back toward the hemisphere's largest markets. For years, cartels exploited this location because its remoteness gave them a natural shield. The Galápagos sits at a point where national jurisdictions dissolve into open water, a patchwork of laws that even experts struggle to map clearly. Once a vessel crosses into those international zones, the line between legal and illegal pursuit gets thin. Add weak radar coverage and the constant movement of fishing fleets, and a smuggler's craft can appear indistinguishable from a trawler at dawn. That's why the corridor became known among traffickers as their hidden highway, a place where tons of cocaine could flow with little chance of interception. Their methods grew just as elusive. Some relied on low-profile, go-fast boats built from fiberglass, skimming over waves with only the engines and crew visible above water. Others turned to semi-submersibles, craft designed to ride barely at the surface, cloaked in ocean camouflage paint. Navigation seldom relied on lights. Instead, small GPS relays transferred encrypted coordinates through preset timers. Crews would wait in darkness until a digital pulse told them exactly when to move. Fuel barrels, supplies, even water were calculated to the pound, ensuring just enough range to reach the next pickup before sinking or detection. But by early 2024, this system began to fold in on itself. New satellites armed with synthetic-aperture radar started mapping wakes invisible to traditional patrols. Maritime patrol aircraft cross-linked their search patterns with Coast Guard cutters, closing the gaps traffickers once relied on. Near the Galápagos, these layers of sensors stacked into a kind of invisible net. That vulnerability was exactly why the Coast Guard chose it to launch the first phase of Operation Pacific Viper in mid-2024. The goal wasn't just a single bust, it was to hit the logistics spine of the route itself. Behind that decision was Joint Interagency Task Force-South, the intelligence core of Western Hemisphere counter-narcotics work. Analysts in Key West had pinpointed the Galápagos corridor months before as the point where multiple trafficking streams converged. Cartel leaders still thought they were invisible, sailing under the shield of isolation. What they didn't know was that U.S. sensors had already tagged them, marking their convoys like digital breadcrumbs. The trap was set, and when Operation Pacific Viper moved in, the so-called hidden highway became the catchpoint for its opening strike. With the zone marked and surveillance live, the next step was intercepting two high-speed vessels long before their radar blips disappeared again. It started with a single encrypted message, two coordinates, a timestamp, and a countdown marked in seconds. Somewhere southeast of the Galápagos, a communication relay bounced through the Pacific network monitored by Joint Interagency Task Force-South. Inside their operations center in Key West, analysts pieced together fragments from coastal informants and radar pings that didn't match fishing patterns. The blips moved fast, straight, and silent, carrying a signature of engines pushed well beyond normal trawler speeds. When both signals lined up within hours of each other, the analysts knew it wasn't coincidence. Two go-fast boats had left South America heading north, cutting toward open water where radar struggled to follow. Each vessel moved at more than 40 knots, skipping over the surface and leaving barely a detectable wake. The cartel strategy was clear: run in parallel, divide Coast Guard attention, and vanish in the clutter of ocean traffic. But the intelligence chain activated almost instantly. From Key West, data moved through Southern Command and then across encrypted satellite channels to Coast Guard cutter Hamilton operating in the region. On board, crews absorbed the coordinates, recalibrated navigation, and readied the embarked helicopter interdiction tactical squadron, HITRON, the unit trained for high-speed maritime chases. Hamilton repositioned 115 miles southeast of the islands, shadowing the search pattern relayed by a maritime patrol aircraft circling overhead. The patrol crew's sensors confirmed movement, and within an hour, the call came through. 2 small craft running side by side. HITRON's helicopter lifted from the cutter's deck, rotor wash scattering spray across the steel surface. At 200 feet above the swells, the aircrew kept formation, waiting for the green light signal authorizing the airborne use of force. When it came, tracer bursts hit the waterline just aft of one boat's hull, slicing across the engine housing. Smoke, then silence. The vessel stopped dead in the water. Boarding teams launched seconds later, cutting through rolling seas in rigid inflatable boats to reach the suspects before they could dump cargo. That first day, June 26th, yielded 8,800 pounds of cocaine stacked in wrapped bundles. Less than 24 hours later, June 27th, another radar contact appeared 125 miles to the southeast. The process repeated: detection, confirmation, launch, pursuit, disable. This time, 4,330 pounds sealed in plastic bricks were pulled from the hold. 2 boats down, more than 13,000 pounds seized in a window of just 48 hours. Every phase unfolded at operational tempo, showing how quickly information could drive an interdiction from analysis to arrest. When Hamilton's deck crews secured the evidence, the weight of saltwater-soaked packaging filled the storage bays. Teams cataloged each brick under the glare of floodlights while the detained smugglers sat guarded on deck. Rough seas hammered the cutter's hull, but the tempo didn't slow. Pacific Viper's first strikes were complete. Yet as intelligence flowed in from the surrounding patrol grid, it was clear these captures touched only one corner of something much larger moving beneath the eastern Pacific. Those 2 captures were just the opening act. By August 8th, Operation Pacific Viper had crippled cartel shipments on a scale rarely seen at sea. After the first raids near the Galápagos, the Coast Guard shifted from hunting isolated smugglers to rewiring its entire Pacific playbook. What began as a local interdiction expanded into a hemisphere-wide mission, drawing cutters, aircraft, and partner navies into a continuous surge that stretched from the equator to the Mexican coast. Command centers in Alameda and Key West worked hand in hand, feeding intelligence loops that refreshed by the hour. Each new radar hit or human source tip could redirect a patrol group hundreds of miles overnight. Within weeks, the ocean south of Panama became a web of moving sentinels. Yet even under that pressure, traffickers adapted fast. Spotter planes shadowed U.S. cutters from high altitude, radioing warnings to convoys below. Some crews disguised hulls with fake fishing licenses, while others towed decoy skiffs filled with scrap metal to confuse infrared sensors. Routes bent west into deeper water, forcing Coast Guard aircraft to stretch their fuel limits. Every adjustment the cartels made exposed a new weak point for analysts to exploit. And as those data streams grew richer, the coordination between ships became the defining strength of Pacific Viper. Cutter Hamilton linked with Vigilant and Diligence, forming a rotating watch line along the corridor. Each vessel carried specialized law enforcement detachments, boarding teams, and flight crews trained for simultaneous chases. Navy support came through USS Cole, whose radar coverage and resupply capability turned the isolated cutters into a networked patrol group. The Dutch ship HNLMS Friesland added another layer, patrolling the mid-Pacific lanes where smugglers once refueled unobserved. Communication flowed across encrypted maritime channels, allowing operators thousands of miles apart to act as one grid. Keeping the surge alive required a logistical lift of its own. Fuel tankers shuttled between ports in Central and South America. Air stations repositioned maritime patrol aircraft to match predicted cartel shifts. When cutters completed seizures, evidence offloads were synchronized, so no vessel stayed out of rotation for long. The tempo rarely slowed. New task units deployed before the previous ones returned. In barely 6 weeks, the combined forces carried out more than 20 interdictions, captured 59 suspects, and seized over 75,000 pounds of cocaine. Each pallet stacked on deck told the same story: cartel supply lines collapsing under constant pressure. When the crews finally returned to Port Everglades in early August, the offload became the largest in Coast Guard history, More than 76,000 pounds of cocaine were heaved onto the dock, valued in the hundreds of millions. Federal agents stood by as forklifts moved pallet after pallet into secured storage. Observers later calculated the confiscated cocaine represented enough lethal doses to wipe out the entire population of Florida. The rapid-fire interdictions off the Galápagos had proven their purpose. They weren't isolated victories. They were the spark that ignited a multinational armada operating at full stride. Pacific Viper had shown that collective surveillance could close even the ocean's wildest gaps. But as the success reports stacked up, another question began taking shape among planners. How long could such a vast operation keep the pressure before the cartels found their next hidden sea lane? The Galápagos raid showed how fast the Coast Guard and allied forces can turn a quiet smuggling lane into a blockade. In less than 2 months, a corridor that traffickers thought was untouchable became a controlled choke point patrolled by ships, aircraft, and data. Pacific Viper proved reach isn't the challenge, endurance is. Cartels will shift, build new boats, and move deeper into open water. The question now is how long nations can sustain this level of coordination and cost before another route replaces it. The seas are the new front line, and the Galápagos were only the beginning. The hidden war at sea is evolving, and this was just the beginning. If this story opened your eyes to what's really happening beyond the radar, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more untold missions from the front lines of global security. The next operation is already underway, and you won't want to miss it.